What's up, guys? So, I guess everyone's been hearing about the Texas shooting. So when I last checked, now it looks as if it was 19 children and two teachers that were killed in this massacre. And as predicted, it was all the different um, predictable responses that people give every time there's a mass shooting. The problem is the mass shootings are happening like every week. The only pause we had between mass shootings was during the pandemic. Apparently, when you have stupid people um, on quarantine, it keeps them from shooting up people. But otherwise, back to business as usual, unfortunately. I was so disgusted that little children were shot up by some little 18-year-old dumbass that I didn't know what to say. But I knew that I was pissed off when I saw dumb people saying thoughts and prayers on my Facebook timeline, and I guess somewhere in the news too. I don't watch evening news or the 24-hour news networks like CNN, MSNBC, or Fox. I think they all suck ass. But yeah, I definitely went. I definitely gave people a piece of my mind about the thoughts and prayers stuff. I basically said, "Fuck your prayers." Um, what these people need are, someone who can stop idiots from getting guns in their hands, not more of your prayers and thoughts, whatever the fuck that means. Um, I don't know where I stand as far as gun rights versus taking away gun rights, because either way, historically, it hasn't really helped black people. So, gun rights have always been restricted. I don't care what these people, Second Amendment um, enthusiasts say, these people who don't know the rest of the Bill of Rights, but jerk off every time they see the Second Amendment. Um, but uh, back in George Washington's presidency, he reined in who could own guns pretty severely, especially since they might have some sort of thoughts on that after just holding a rebellion against the British Empire and seeing a small uprising during his presidency against one of his policies that weren't too popular. But there's always been gun restrictions in this country, and up until what the the late 2000s, or whatever, there the common interpretation of the Second Amendment was that it referred to militias having the right to bear arms, which meant like you know the National Guard or something like that. It wasn't interpreted to mean the individual citizen, although it probably always did, since as individual citizens they will form a militia. Either way, that's besides the point. The point is, people are going to have guns. That's here to stay. But um, the severe restrictions on guns didn't help black people because, again, it wasn't really a problem until the Black Panthers had it, and then your gun-loving President Ronald Reagan, when he was governor of California, put restrictions because he didn't like the Black Panthers being able to freely walk around with guns, even though it was their right by law and California state law. But on the other hand, letting any um, for the gun zealots and stuff like that, it doesn't help black people either because these little rednecks be the first ones to shoot up stuff, especially black people and brown people and Jewish people and people of color. So don't know where I fall on that, but there needs to be much heavy restrictions. And I mean, we just at least maybe start with assault weapons. My personal thing is, as a vet, if you were unqualified to join the service, you should be unqualified to have an assault weapon. Like, if Uncle Sam didn't trust you to join his army, his navy, his air force, his marines, his coast guard, his space force, then why should you have a weapon that a person in the military would typically use? Like, you're either physically unfit, mentally unfit, both. Um, maybe you don't. Maybe your background is messed up so that you can't join the military, or you're too stupid to get into the ASVAB to get a good ASVAB score. And for the Marines and Army, I think the lowest score they accept is a 31 AFQT, which is the arm stands for, I think, the Armed Forces uh, quartile test. The AFQT is basically the military's IQ within the ASVAB itself, and the minimum for each branch differs. Like I said, the Army and the Marines takes the lowest, obviously, because they just need people to carry rifles, um, and the Air Force and Space Force typically take the highest, as you're doing probably the most heady sorts of jobs in the military. And mind you, the 31, if it, like, it's not a direct correlation to the IQ test, but it's like a point 0.8 or so high positive correlation to an IQ test. So roughly a 31 and an AFQT would be equivalent to maybe about a 90 something on an IQ test. So below average intelligence. You can get into the military with below average intelligence. So my thing is, if you can't even get into the military, you don't qualify for an assault weapon. Okay. Um, a lot of these a lot of these gun nuts don't qualify for the military. Then you have the others who are vets like myself, and they enjoy guns. I trust them a little bit more because they've been trained properly with how to handle weaponry, and presumably they won't just loke out. I could be wrong, but I would trust them a little bit more with handling weapons than the average person. I think the average person is a moron. Sorry. Well, the average person is sort of a moron because the average person is the IQ of 100. Um, Mind you, that doesn't seem bad, but the average IQ of someone who graduated from high school is about 105. Okay, whereas the average college student's IQ is 120, and that's the average. Okay, so I do believe in intellectual elitism. We can talk about that another day. But either way, stupid people and people who are unfit for military service shouldn't have access to dangerous weapons. Same thing for people who would fail an MMPI 2 test. Maybe they should start doing that, which is it's the test used basically for clinical diagnosis of severe mental disorders. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to get a better image here, and maybe they should use that as a prerequisite. Although I don't want to get into the whole thing about it's all about mental health. It's everything is about mental health. So that's sort of a red herring in the issue of these mass shootings and stuff like that. Besides that, there are people who hold guns and stuff like that in other countries that don't do this cowboy stuff. So I was really sad looking at all these little children who died yesterday, and I'll probably have more to say when I've gathered my thoughts about it. But I didn't really read too much about it because I didn't really want to up, be upset getting into too much of the details. So I'm pretty sure I will be once I finally do look at the details, guys. If you have thoughts about it, you can leave it in the comments too, or if you disagree with me with anything, that's cool. Let's just be civil about it, because like I said, I don't really know which way I fall as far as gun rights versus gun restrictions, but there needs to be more restrictions. Like I said, as far as I'm concerned, like I said, you shouldn't have access to assault weapons if you couldn't qualify for the military, or you have below average IQ, or you've been diagnosed with severe mental disorders. And that's not to say all mental disorders, because I don't want, because again, I hate how anyone who has a history of mental health problems can be, thrown in that category. I myself have dealt with clinical depression, which I've talked about in a previous video, but not to the point where it was so severe where I couldn't function, but it was very debilitating. Don't get me wrong. However, like I said, there is a difference between severe mental illnesses and mild and moderate mental illnesses, which we all suffer from time to time. Let's not pretend we don't. Mental health and hygiene is a real thing that everyone's is gonna have problems with at some point. But severe mental illnesses is way different. Those are people who are suffering from things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, um, antisocial personality disorders, stuff like that. Things that are very very hard to treat as well, and usually come with heavy medication, heavy psychoactive medication to treat it, if they're treatable at all. Those those three categories of folks don't need weapons. And if someone's already writing a manifesto or something online saying they're going to invoke violence upon innocent people, that should be a red flag. I mean, Facebook and all these other social media already steal our data. Let's be real. So they already know what's going on. But they don't, when they should be actually taking advantage of the time when they're like stealing our data. They don't. They only use it to sell it to these data collectors, so that they can use it for targeting advertisements to folks, as well as more insidious things as well, but never to help prevent any crimes. Well, no, that's not true. They do give that data over to law enforcement too, but usually not in helpful ways. It's usually just to spy on people and stuff like that. But again, it doesn't. They don't use it in proactive ways to give to law enforcement. It's usually in a more sinister way. So anyway, this video is getting too long, guys. I'm not going to say thoughts and prayers for the folks who died or their parents. I'm going to say fuck the loser who killed them. I'm glad his dumb ass is dead. I feel horrible about these little kids dying, and I'm certainly, I although I'm not a parent yet, I can definitely understand every parent's trepidation today, dropping off their little kid to school, wondering will their school be next. Hopefully not, but the trend doesn't show that it's going to end yet until something's done and we have a feckless president to do anything about it based on his speech. All right, guys, talk to you later.